President Trump will speak tonight at Mount Rushmore ahead of Independence Day. The visit captures the president at this moment, turning to symbols from the past and rallying his base as his campaign faces mounting challenges. Native American leaders are outraged. They are worried that the event, where face coverings are not required, could spread the coronavirus and that it violates their claim to the land. Meanwhile, jobs numbers have improved, but the economic crisis continues. So do protests over racial injustice, and many states are now pulling back on reopening as case numbers soar. Joining us tonight are four aces who cover the White House. Weijia Jiang, White House correspondent for CBS News. Ayesha Rascoe, White House reporter for National Public Radio. Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times. And Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for Axios. Ayesha, I just got off the phone a minute ago with a Trump campaign advisor who told me this speech tonight at Mount Rushmore, he's going to go after the, quote, left-wing mob. He's going to go after, quote, cancel culture. Is this part of a pattern we've seen all week with the president stoking racial and cultural tension?
Yes, I mean, this is clearly where the president feels most comfortable, basically talking about white grievances, talking about, you know, the culture war, monuments, things of that nature, the radical left. That's where he wants to be, and that's what he wants to be talking about, because he doesn't want to be talking about all that other stuff you mentioned, like the Russian bounties, and he definitely doesn't want to be talking about the cases that are surging and the reopening that is not going the way that he said that it would be going. So he's leaning back on those things that worked for him in 2016 and hoping that they'll work for him now.
Are they working for him? Weijia, when you talk to White House officials and Trump advisors, what are they telling you? He's been attacking Black Lives Matter all week.
Well, you know, Bob, if you just look at what's happened this week, it's been a really challenging one for President Trump because of this very matter. He started the week retweeting supporters who were shouting white power, and then the White House had to clean that up and say that he didn't hear the audio in that video. And then he was tweeting about Black Lives Matter and, you know, criticizing the mayor of New York for his plan to paint it along Fifth Avenue, saying it would denigrate the luxury avenue and calling it a symbol of hate, which required even more cleanup, having to say that the president was referring to the organization Black Lives Matter and not the words. Of course, he did not make that distinction in his tweet. And I think what you're seeing is just the president, again, being out of touch with what's happening throughout the country as Americans grapple with how to expel racism and having these really tough conversations that he is only making worse. And so I think when you talk to White House officials, they acknowledge that he's not doing himself any favors. When you talk to campaign sources, they tell us that, look, yes, the president is, as Ayesha said, you know, talking to his base. But if they're focused on those battleground states where he's trying to get moderates, it doesn't seem like this is a good plan.
Jonathan, are they shaking up this campaign at all as they look at these poll numbers?
There's been a minor shakeup this week. Jared Kushner appointed a friend of his to be the chief operating officer and sidelined Michael Glassner, who was running the rallies. This is in the wake of the debacle at Tulsa, where the crowd was not what was anticipated. The other dynamic at play is Jared Kushner has been belittling Brad Parscale, the campaign manager, in meetings in front of other people. And there's been a lot of finger pointing and blame shifting to go around, both inside the White House and the campaign. That's often what happens when numbers are what we are right now. He's fallen out of his usual polling range. He's softened a little bit even among Republicans, but certainly the bottom has fallen out with independents. They've got this horrific gender gap, which has been pretty consistent. And the other problem they've got, which you talk to people on the campaign, they don't really know the answer to, is there just isn't the visceral hatred for Joe Biden among the public that there was for Hillary Clinton. There's about a 20 percentage point gap in the very unfavorable rating that Joe Biden has versus what Hillary Clinton had this time last cycle. So they're trying to figure out ways to demonize Joe Biden, and they don't have much time.
Jonathan, just a quick follow-up here. You said the president is hearing from Jared Kushner, who's now souring on Brad Parscale, the campaign manager. Is the president souring on his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who has pushed criminal justice reform and other issues with him?
President Trump has, in several conversations over the last week, told people that he regretted following Jared Kushner's advice in going for criminal justice reform. And he's made very clear that he's not going to do any more of this outreach to, like police reform, for example. Trump flirted with that recently. You're not going to see any more of that flirtation. He is going hardline, unequivocally siding with law enforcement. You're not going to see any more actions that could be seen as being sympathetic to the protest movement. Full stop. He is going full Trump, full base, entirely gut instincts from here to November.
Peter, as Republicans watch this, you're writing a book about James Baker, one of the leaders of the Republican establishment, with your wife, Susan Glasser. As they watch this president go to Mount Rushmore, play to his base, what do they see, and are they ready to break with him in any way?
Well, I think they see a president who's self-destructive. They see a president who doesn't seem to be doing the things that they think he needs to do in order to get back on track and begin to win again. Right now, he's behind double digits in multiple polls. He can write all he wants about how they're fake, but in fact, most Republicans believe the polls are pretty accurate at this point. And you haven't seen an incumbent president since 1948 who was this far behind in July come back and win. This is not a very strong position for an incumbent to be in, and it's not a very strong incumbent who is busy playing to his base this late in the cycle rather than trying to reach out. This is a president who's not reaching out. He's not trying to expand the support he had when he came to office. He's trying simply to consolidate those people who were with him 4 years ago to be with him again. That worked 4 years ago. He pulled an inside straight, won the Electoral College vote without winning the popular vote. But the question about the chances of doing that again this year, especially if the popular vote is as distant as it looks at the moment, are pretty grim. Having said that, this is a president who has defied the odds before. 4 years ago, this time, Republicans wrote him off as well. They thought he was a loser. They thought he was going to bring them all down. They worried about what would happen to the House. They worried about what would happen to the Senate. So you're seeing some of the same kind of similarities right now, where Republicans are kind of looking at an every person for himself kind of attitude. But he has a way of surprising people, and 120 days in Trump world is an eternity.
Oh, that's true. An hour is an eternity in Trump world, as we all know, 3.5 years into covering this presidency. Weijia, we just saw some images from South Dakota from that event at Mount Rushmore. Did not look like there was social distancing going on as a band played. What's the White House's view as these coronavirus cases spike nationwide and states pull back on the reopening?
Well, I think we are seeing a departure from many top officials, especially doctors, from President Trump and the messaging that he wants to send out, which, by the way, is on full display tonight in South Dakota, because the Republican governor there says social distancing will not be required. Masks will be optional. And here he is addressing a crowd of about 7,500 people, I think, wanting to show people that, you know, here we are on 4th of July. Let's have a great celebration and a good time. Never mind the fact that this week we are seeing records set again in this country for the number of cases. And so I think it is important to note, though, for example, Dr. Fauci, Admiral Brett Giroir, who's in charge of testing this week, have publicly said things that I imagine make the president very angry. Dr. Fauci saying that he expects the numbers to go up even more, to possibly 100,000 a day, while the president is saying that he thinks the virus is just going to disappear. The president insists that the only reason why cases are going up is because there's more testing. Admiral Giroir said under oath that that's only partly true, because the number of positive cases are going up too. And finally, you have Vice President Mike Pence, who is embracing wearing masks in public and finally urging the public to do so as well. And so even though for all this time the president has tried very hard to be the messenger in chief, we are finally seeing those around him saying something differently, because you just cannot deny the fact that we do not have control of this.
Ayesha, to build off that point from Weijia, you listen to Vice President Biden's speech this week and you hear a candidate, a contender who's talking about the coronavirus, putting it front and center and raising questions about leadership with President Trump. When you open your notebook and you look back at this week for Biden, what do you think this week revealed?
Well, this week revealed a candidate who is able to lean in and is trying to hammer away on President Trump's weaknesses, all those things that we've been talking about. What the Biden campaign sees is an opportunity for Biden to present himself as the responsible leader, willing to tell you the truth, even though it's not fun. Yes, you still need to wear your mask. You need to socially distance. We're not through with this yet, and really taking it seriously. And when you look at polls, that seems to be more where the public is than where President Trump is. The public supports wearing masks. The public supports, putting health and safety first over reopening the economy. So it seems like that's where the people are, but for some reason, President Trump is refusing to do that. And especially when you look at older voters who President Trump absolutely needs, but he's now having troubles with, they don't want to necessarily take these risks, especially with their own health. But President Trump is, asking them to come out without masks and celebrate him. And so I think that what you see over and over again is Biden drawing that differentiation from him and President Trump, and Trump still struggling to define Biden.
Ayesha, you got me thinking maybe we need to get some Washington Week face coverings at some point. We'll have to think about that with our team here. But Jonathan, I want you to jump in. Yeah, we'll consult with you, Ayesha, on that. Jonathan, I was looking at the jobs numbers this week. We're all looking at the jobs numbers. There's some recovery, but the economy's still in crisis. Do the numbers mean the White House could be more open at this point to a second stimulus?
It's a really good question. I don't think it's. I actually don't think it's the right question, though. I think the real question is, will Mitch McConnell be open to revising? I don't have any sense that Donald Trump would have any fiscal restraint. If given his own way, I think would the sky's the limit as to what stimulus he would inject into the economy to give himself a nice fiscal run through to November. The real challenge is Mitch McConnell. And when McConnell met with Trump and discussed this in the Oval, he set a pretty hard cap of $1 trillion. He wanted this next package to be under $1 trillion. The last time I checked in with someone close to McConnell was a few days ago, and they said that that still stands. I don't know if that's sustainable. I think they're probably going to have to go more than that, because it does look like it's going to be a bumpy road to November. We have had some of the biggest states, the most powerful economic states like Texas and California, have to retreat a little from their reopening. So that surely has to change the calculations.
And never forget about Mitch McConnell. It's good advice for all us reporters.